Okay, and welcome to episode 6 of The Story of the Song. I thought I'd continue with the Big Bamboo trilogy, the 3 singles that were released by MCA and that we shot quite expensive videos for. So I thought, as I did Fell Off a Mountain last month, let's do Shooting From My Heart, because there's a lot to say about this. So let's start at the beginning. Shooting From My Heart, written in my house in Plaistow. Shark and I, on our writing Sundays, came up with this song. And cut to the chase, we got signed by MCA Records in London. And we started making the album in, I guess, late 1988. And I think when we got signed by MCA, they thought of us as a sort of slightly quirky English-Canadian duo, acoustic guitars, a beatbox, drum machine on cassette, that kind of thing. And so they stuck us in this really nice little bijou studio in Chiswick called Parsival, owned by, I think, Howard Davidson, I think was the owner. I've forgotten. It's Howard, anyway. Hi, Howard, if you're watching. I'm sorry if I forgot your surname. And it was a great little studio. Richard Mannering was producing. It was 16-track studio, analog tape, of course, back then. And as far as I recall, it didn't really have a live room. It was one large area, but plenty of space to record live. But the control room was just one big control room with a live area, I think. And that was fine. Everything was going great. We were recording. Shark and I were busy working away madly with Richard, and we laid down all the tracks. And then I guess, as is the custom with labels, they needed to send work in progress. We were close to completing it, as far as I remember. Anyway, they had to send what they had, recent signings, over to the big bosses in Los Angeles. And surprise, surprise, the big bosses came back and said, wow, Shooting From My Heart, that's a mega hit, just as long as it has more chug-a-lug guitars on it. I'm not even going to go into that. Anyway, so the next thing we knew, we were out of this budget studio, which probably cost a few £100 a day, and moved over to Livingston Studios in Wood Green, which was more in the range of £1,000 or so per day. I don't know how long we spent there. It was a fair bit of time. But anyway, we continued recording there, and I believe we mixed everything there. I'm pretty sure we did. And so that was the beginning of the sort of American part of the story, because prior to that, Shark and I were just, over the moon to have a record deal, signed to a major label. We had no thoughts about America, to be honest. We didn't fix our sights on anything except getting a record out there and touring. And so the Americans had got very, very excited about this track, Shooting From My Heart. So I remember being in the studio for the playback to the bosses of MCA England. I can't remember all of them. Tony Powell was the managing director, I think. Jeff Galembo, that's right. I remember at one point Jeff Galembo looked over at somebody from the team and put 3 fingers up, and that apparently meant 3 million units were going to be sold. He was so excited. Well, we were excited, but we took it all with a pinch of salt even then. So the record was finished. The Americans went crazy for it. Now, they didn't like the video and the single Fell Off a Mountain for the American market. They didn't think that the Americans would like it. It was far too quirky for them, so they said. So they thought, I've mentioned that in the other video, I think. So they wanted, and they also said that MTV wouldn't touch it with a barge pole, which was also, their estimation, and we found out later not really true. So they decided, in their wisdom, that we should spend a great deal of money hiring a producer, a director rather, called Nigel Dick, whose name was Nigel Dick, and whose headed notepaper said, "From the Dick at Nigel's desk." So Nigel had a sense of humour. He'd produced, or rather directed, videos for Britney Spears, for major artists, and he was known to be good at turning out videos that MTV would programme. So I think the budget for Fell Off a Mountain, I think I mentioned it in the last video, was around 30 or £35,000. The budget for Shooting From My Heart, which we then were starting to plan to shoot, was raised to about £50,000, as I recall. So the shoot, I think it was in November. I'm pretty sure it was in November, and the reason that I'm fairly sure about that, even after 40-odd years, is that we had a slight problem. So Big Bamboo, we had a party at our manager's house, or rather our manager's office, Marylebone House in Marylebone Road. Big old red brick, I guess it's Victorian, I'm not sure, blocks of super flats, apartments, offices, I don't know what they are. And we were up on the roof celebrating something. Maybe it was even November the 5th, I can't remember. But we had a party up there. And the Big Bamboo were there with the touring band. And the touring band was Mickey Sparrow on drums, Finian De Lewis on bass, and Daniel Biro, or Biro, as I used to call him, on keyboards. So we had this party, and I guess we were all getting a bit drunk and having fun. And then we went back to Jonathan's office, where an extraordinary disaster occurred. Mickey sat on a glass table, which shattered and broke, and cut a main artery somewhere on the top of his leg. Now, I must have left by then, because I've got a feeling I wasn't there when it actually happened. But anyway, fortunately, his life was literally saved by our then sound engineer, Glyn Wood's girlfriend, who was a first aider and knew what to do. Mickey ended up in hospital. I think Shark and I had left, because I remember getting a call, or somebody, I don't remember the details, but anyway, all we knew was that Mickey had been extremely badly injured, lost an enormous amount of blood, and was in hospital. So now, at that point, the video shoot for Shooting From My Heart had been scheduled, and it was going to take place the next week, I don't know which day, at Chatham Docks. There's a naval museum there, and the director, Nigel Dick, had decided we're going to film the clip at Chatham Docks, Naval Museum. So I remember Shark and I had the terrible task of going to the hospital and seeing a deathly pale Mick in bed, laid up like, looking like death's door. He really looked terrible, and apparently, it was a very, very serious laceration, and he would have died had it not been for the help that he received on the spot. And we had to say to him, Mickey, the video shoot is in whatever it was, 2 or 3 days. We hate to do this. We can't cancel the video. We're going to have to get someone to replace you for the part of the drummer. And Mickey, I remember so well saying pretty much something like, "Over my dead body," and he absolutely refused to accept that he was not going to make the video, because Mickey Sparrow is a real pro. He is a trooper. He is an absolute diamond of a guy, and I love him to this day. He's brilliant. We're still mates. He's played on lots of things I've done since. Anyway, he assured us that he would be there by hook or by crook. And now the record company, realizing that this was probably a bit of a risk, paid for a nurse to bring him to the shoot and to be on standby all day, because he had some pretty serious stitches in his leg, or in his arse. It was his arse, I guess, the top of his arse. I don't know. Anyway, so we did the shoot, and Mickey was extraordinary, as you would expect from someone who is a dedicated professional musician like Mickey Sparrow is. And we did the shoot, and if you watch the video, there's a particular part where the close-up is of Mick doing a fill across the drums. And other people have said to me, and I'm sure I've said to other people, I'd said to Mickey, and that the passion that he exhibits as he does that roll across the drums is just great. The look on his face, he's just completely, in there with that fill. In actual fact, he told us later, when we were looking at the playbacks and saying things, that wasn't a look of passion. It was a look of intense pain. Mickey was in intense pain all throughout that shoot. So that's that's that part of the story. And anyway, we shot the video. So the next thing that happened was the video got sent off to America, and the single was scheduled for release in America in, I think it was March 1989. And it started getting a lot of airplay. It became a hit, number 17, I think, on the adult-orientated rock radio. It was a hit in Canada. I think it went top 20 there. But the video, that they had spent all this money and hired this MTV-friendly director, Nigel Dick, MTV didn't like it and they didn't program it. It didn't get, I think it might have got 1 or 2 plays literally at 4 o'clock in the morning, but MTV, they said, well, it just didn't get programmed. So although the record was getting lots of radio airplay all across the country on rock radio, without the MTV support, it was not going to go any further, so it didn't cross over into the Billboard chart. So it's very strange and amusing to me now to look back at that time and think that MCA had said, no. The Americans said, no. Fell Off a Mountain really isn't an American thing. They won't go for it. And Shooting from a Heart, yeah, we love that. That's a great rock track. And the video, they thought it was great. I got to admit, at the time, I can't remember what Shark's reaction was at the time. I know my reaction was I didn't really like it very much. I thought it was I don't know. It didn't show our personality very much. And in fact, they dressed us. They hired somebody to dress us, and I didn't really like the way we looked. But it's a fun video. Well, fun, 50 grand's worth of fun. Anyway, the video will follow this podcast. I have yet to get a decent copy of it. In fact, the copy the version that you see on YouTube, and that I will tag on the end of this, it was taken from VHS with a very cheap converter way back, probably in the 90s, I think. I don't remember. I digitized it, maybe even in the early 2000s. I will be eventually sending off the VHS copy. That's all I have, the VHS copy, which may be a copy of a copy. I'm going to send it off to one of these places that digitizes things at 4K. So at some point there'll be a remastered video version. But for the moment, you can watch the rather small low-resolution version that's on YouTube. The guitar that I play in this video, in Shooting from My Heart, is a K. I think it was called a Jazz Special, made in about 1970-something. I still have that guitar. It's really falling apart now. All the edging and binding is coming apart. The glue's worn away. But it sounds incredible. And it is one of 2 guitars that I still have from that time, the other being a 1963 Fender Jaguar. But we lost a lot of equipment in New York when we moved to New York to cut the second album and got dropped by MCA at the very end of that album. All our equipment was in a storage place, a rehearsal studio called Big Mike's. And Big Mike was one of these bodybuilding, all gung-ho American boys. And apparently MCA didn't pay the storage bill, so he kept a lot. Well, in fact, I went up there to get my guitars, and he said, MCA haven't paid the bill. And I managed to get, I think the K was already at home, but I managed to get the Fender from him with a bit of a sob story saying, I need my guitar, man. He wouldn't let us have the rest of the equipment, which was considerable. I mean, there were several other guitars. I had a beautiful Epiphone Casino, I think it was, bit like a 335, 1966. We had amplifiers, we had all sorts of stuff. But Big Mike, if you're out there, you're a nicking the equipment of bands when the bill is actually with MCA, and you just don't want to lose the business with them. But nobody thinks much of you for nicking instruments from musicians. Anyway, I think that's probably it. So I hope you enjoy watching the video, and the song still lives. I've been singing it in my set since I moved out here to France. I put it back in as an acoustic version after I'll tell you another funny story about the song Why Not. So when I arrived here, I started going out to open mics and jam sessions and so on to make contacts. And I did a jam in a local blues club called T Blues, which is very close to me. It's shut down now. It's shut during COVID. And that night there was an English drummer and a French bass player, and I did a little jam with them. And the owner of the club said, well, why don't you do a gig? I said, yeah, I'd love to do a gig. And he said, yeah, but I don't really like solos. Do you want to do a gig with those two guys? And I said, sure, why not? Why not? It was fun, you know. So we arranged a date. And I said to the guys, if we can have maybe a day's rehearsal, an afternoon's rehearsal at my place to learn, an hour's worth of songs. I sent them some tapes, I guess, or files, sorry, not tapes, MP3s. Anyway, we had one rehearsal, and Shooting from My Heart, we rehearsed it as it is pretty much on the record, a sort of rock drum thing. I wasn't playing electric guitar, but I played the acoustic guitar quite heavily, so it had that kind of rock feel. On the night of the gig, it was really funny. Charlie, the drummer, completely forgot the arrangement that we'd done, and for some reason started to play a bossa nova kind of shuffling feel to it. And I was completely shocked, but of course you just carry on. But actually, it kind of worked. And from that day on, I started playing the song in my solo set as a kind of slow groove. And I did release a version of that a few years back on Spotify, which you can find. And it lives on because now in the duo with Sophie, Scardanelli and Sophie, it's a very big feature of our set. It's a really great piece in the middle of the show. Sophie has added this beautiful ethereal voice to it, and with accordion and guitar and my foot pedal drum, it's got a completely different feel, and that'll be on the album, which we hope to complete later this year. So Shooting from My Heart, Story of the Song, Episode 6. The song doesn't remain the same. The song changes as the years pass, but the song still exists. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.
Back of my mind, there's a picture of you falling like a stone from a cliff. What a beautiful view. Wonder if the ships in the night know where they're going, never knowing where they belong. We better not sail away, we better not go, we better not fade away. From a room with a view, fighting for a word in a book that I know isn't true, screaming for the right to be heard and never winning, drowning in an ocean of blue. We better not sail away, we better not go, we better not